The Victorian era was a time of profound scientific discoveries and rapid industrial advancements, yet it was also an era deeply enamored with the mystical and supernatural. Among the central figures in the spiritualist movement of this period was Leonora Piper, a medium whose reputed abilities captivated public imagination and drew the attention of the Society for Psychical Research, SPR. Unlike many contemporary mediums who were quickly dismissed as frauds, Mrs. Piper became a unique case due to the extensive scientific scrutiny she underwent. Her life, experiences, and the rigorous investigations of her abilities continue to offer valuable insights into the interplay between belief, skepticism, and the scientific pursuit of understanding the unknown. Leonora Simons was born in Nashua, New Hampshire in 1857. Little is known about her early life, but her journey into spiritualism began in the 1880s after she married William Piper, a Boston merchant. Following the death of a family member and an encounter with a spiritualist medium, Mrs. Piper experienced a transformative event during a séance. She entered what she described as a trance-like state and reportedly began to exhibit signs of mediumistic ability. Over time, these episodes became more pronounced, and she began to act as a channel for purported communications from spirits. Piper's séances attracted attention for their apparent authenticity. She was said to convey detailed and specific information about the deceased loved ones of her clients, often speaking in voices that claimed to belong to the spirits themselves. Her most prominent spirit guide was a personality known as Dr. Finuit, who purported to be a French physician. Later, other personalities, including George Pellew, emerged during her trances, each with unique characteristics and knowledge. These entities became central to the investigations that would define Piper's legacy. The Society for Psychical Research, founded in 1882, sought to investigate claims of paranormal phenomena with scientific rigor. In an era where fraudulent mediums abounded, the SPR aimed to discern genuine psychic abilities from trickery. William James, the eminent psychologist and philosopher, was one of the first members of the SPR to investigate Mrs. Piper. James had a personal interest in spiritualism, and Piper's consistent accuracy in her séances intrigued him. James conducted a series of observations over several years and concluded that Mrs. Piper's phenomena defied conventional explanation. In his writings, he described her as the one white crow among mediums, suggesting that her existence as a genuine case disproved the claim that all mediums were fraudulent. While James remained cautious in interpreting her abilities, his endorsement lent Piper significant credibility and paved the way for further investigation. In 1887, Richard Hodgson, a leading SPR investigator, undertook an in-depth study of Mrs. Piper. Hodgson was known for his skepticism and had previously exposed fraudulent mediums. He approached Piper's case with a critical eye, designing experiments to rule out deception. One of Hodgson's key strategies was to obscure the identities of séance participants, referred to as sitters. Sitters were sometimes disguised or replaced with strangers to prevent Piper from gaining information through social cues or advanced knowledge. Despite these precautions, Piper continued to provide detailed information about the sitters and their deceased relatives, often relaying obscure details that appeared to validate her claims. Hodgson also investigated the spirit guides who communicated through Piper. The most intriguing of these was George Pellew, a young lawyer and SPR member who died unexpectedly in 1892. Pellew's spirit reportedly spoke through Piper with remarkable familiarity and detailed memories of his life, convincing some of his surviving friends of the authenticity of the communication. Hodgson himself became a strong believer in Piper's abilities, arguing that her mediumship represented genuine contact with the dead. Despite the extensive research, Mrs. Piper's mediumship remained a subject of heated debate. Critics pointed out that her trances might not reflect communication with spirits, but rather subconscious processes. Some suggested that she had an extraordinary capacity for telepathy, allowing her to access the thoughts or memories of her sitters. This hypothesis, while speculative, gained traction among researchers seeking to reconcile her abilities with natural explanations. Another contentious issue was the reliability of her spirit guides. Dr. Finuit, for example, claimed to be a French physician, but displayed no verifiable knowledge of medicine or the French language. Skeptics argued that Finuit was a construct of Piper's imagination, rather than a genuine entity. Similarly, while the Pellew communications impressed many, detractors argued that Piper might have unconsciously absorbed knowledge of Pellew during her association with the SPR. Over time, skepticism about spiritualism as a whole grew, fueled by the exposure of fraudulent practices among other mediums. While Piper's case remained compelling, it was increasingly framed as an anomaly rather than proof of life after death. In the early 20th century, Mrs. Piper's mediumship began to decline, mirroring the waning popularity of spiritualism. Advances in psychology, particularly the study of the subconscious, offered alternative explanations for phenomena previously attributed to spirits. Concepts such as dissociation and automatic writing were reinterpreted as manifestations of the human mind, rather than evidence of supernatural forces. Nevertheless, Piper continued to participate in seances and investigations until the 1920s. Her abilities, while less prominent, still attracted attention from researchers interested in anomalous psychology and parapsychology. By the time of her death in 1950, Mrs. Piper's legacy was firmly established as one of the most thoroughly studied cases of mediumship in history. The life and experiences of Leonora Piper represent a fascinating chapter in the history of spiritualism and psychical research. Her case challenged investigators to confront the boundaries between science, belief, and skepticism. The meticulous studies conducted by the SPR remain a model of early attempts to apply scientific principles to the study of paranormal phenomena. Mrs. Piper's legacy also highlights the cultural and intellectual tensions of the Victorian era. In a time when science was rapidly expanding the understanding of the natural world, spiritualism offered a counterpoint that appealed to the emotional and existential concerns of the public. For many, the idea of communicating with the dead was not only comforting, but also a challenge to the materialistic worldview that dominated scientific discourse. From a modern perspective, Mrs. Piper's case continues to be a source of interest for scholars of history, psychology, and parapsychology. While definitive proof of her abilities remains elusive, her story illustrates the enduring human desire to explore the mysteries of existence and consciousness. Leonora Piper's life and the extensive investigations into her mediumship exemplify the Victorian era's unique blend of curiosity, skepticism, and wonder. Her abilities, whether interpreted as genuine communication with the dead or extraordinary feats of the mind, captivated some of the era's greatest thinkers and left a lasting impact on the study of paranormal phenomena. While the ultimate truth of her mediumship remains unresolved, Mrs. Piper's story serves as a testament to the complexity of human experience and the quest to understand the unknown.